From sunny Southern California, we bring you Meet Bridget. Bring it on, baby. Well, today on the podcast, we have Jodie McCollum here. She is the founder and owner of Mahjong OC. Many of you are probably familiar with this Mahjong craze that feels like it's just coming up right now, but there has been Mahjong circles and communities building for a long time. And Jodie, I feel like you have grasped this opportunity. You took an interest in the game and you have built such an amazing business and community, and you are plugging into all sorts of corporate events, private clients, community groups. And I think this is such a fun interview to have on the podcast because I really think you're an example of someone that's taken a cultural phenomenon and turned it into a business that's bringing people together in a time when we really need it. So I'd love for you to just dive in and tell us a little bit about what is it taking to run Mahjong OC right now?
Well, thank you for having me. And it's so fun because you came to one of my classes.
Yes.
So you got to experience what it's like to learn the game under the Mahjong OC way. I really fell into this. And like you said, it is having a moment, but it's been around for a long time. And we really want to honor the tradition in the Chinese heritage and the Jewish heritage of the game. I think that it had a resurgence around COVID, like so many things when we were stuck at home.
Yeah.
And what do? A lot of people played Rummikub. Mahjong started to have another kind of craze. It was actually huge in the 1920s. There's such a history in the game. So it's not new, but 100 years later, it's having another resurgence. And so when I learned, it was in Dallas, which is we call kind of the motherland of Mahjong OC, the modern motherland, because I went to Dallas to visit a good friend who had moved there. And she said, you need to learn this game, Mahjong. Everyone is playing it. And I've hired an instructor to come to my house, and she's going to teach you and some of my friends. And so I participated in that, and there was a table of women that knew how to play, and then there was the beginner table. And I just remember looking over at them and going, oh my gosh, that seems so far away to be able to understand the game. But came back to Orange County, and I didn't really know anyone who was playing. This was in 2023. And so I just started playing online and loved it, loved what it did for my brain. It really, all the things that I think now it's having a reason that it is so popular. I was experiencing that. But the point of the game is to play in person, not to play online with robots. And so I taught a friend, and then she said, I think I know a couple of other people that took lessons at the senior center. So the four of us started getting together on a weekly basis. I guess I'm not answering your question about the business, but kind of how I got there. Yes. Long story longer. So we started playing every Friday from 12:30 to 2:30. And it was a sacred time for me as a busy mom to just say, this is my time. I'm going to use my brain. I'm going to be in connection with these women. And it's so aesthetically pleasing. And I protected that 2 hours. I wouldn't, like it was my job. And so then we had a hard cutoff. We would go do carpool or whatever we had the rest of the day. But we did that for almost a year. And we were at our local club. And so people would stop by and say, oh my gosh, I've been wanting to learn. And my girlfriends in that group said, you really remember the rules. You remember the nuances. I have a background in training, which we can go into. And so sort of as like a dare / nudge / I offered to teach one of the girls, her neighbors. And I remembered, I'd been taught by this instructor, and I know people have sort of been making a go at coming up with an alternative to a 6-week class. So what was out there was 6-week series at the senior center. The JCC offers classes, but the kind of the thought behind 1 or 2 classes is that a lot of people don't have 6 weeks to learn. And so the curriculum that I took and sort of ran with was, what can I do in a night, getting you understanding the game, playing it, and then learning it more on your own or through a second follow-up class. So in January of last year, I taught my first class, and I thought, okay, I wonder if there'll be a demand for it.
Mhm.
I loved it. I walked away from that class and I just felt so invigorated.
Mhm.
And it went really well. And then I had another class. And so this time last year, I'd maybe taught 8 to 10 classes.
Mhm.
And then I started to get into the branding side of things. I have a marketing background, and all the things that I sort of had put on the shelf while I raised my kids all came back to me. My business background, my marketing background, my training background. I'm loving the idea of creating a brand, loving the idea of meeting a need. It all sort of came together at once. And then my question about if there would be the demand for it was answered, where fast forward a year, I meant to look up these numbers before I came, but I think we've taught 175 classes, 2,000 people. I have a
Wow.
team of 9. And so, yes, it's been a lot of trial and error. It's been
Yeah.
a lot of just respond and react as fast as I can,
Yes.
because the need and the demand is there. But always keeping it to where people felt like they were getting a great experience, an elevated experience. So that's sort of where I was last January, where I am today. And now we're getting into more of the corporate events and special events. And we'll talk about the league that we started.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's
Well,
a
and
lot.
also you're in different locations now too. It's not just in like local Orange County. Are you being drawn to other places to
Yes,
teach
so
as
we've gone
well?
down to San Diego,
Yeah.
we've gone up to LA. One of the girls on my team is moving to London. And so we've talked about what does it look like to have a little franchise in
Amazing.
London. So yeah, it's
It's
been amazing.
Well, I feel so lucky that I met you by being able to experience that like beginner class,
Yes.
and I remember I read in like middle school or something, this book called The Joy Luck Club
Mm-hmm.
by Amy Tan. And I loved this book. And in the book, there are these women that would play Mahjong, and right, it was Mahjong that they're
Yes.
playing.
Yes.
And I just felt like the way it was written, I felt like I was sitting at that table and smelling the smells and feeling the tiles. And so much of the game is like, it's very, what's the word? The tiles are very like aesthetically pleasing. They're
Tactile.
tactile. Yeah.
Mhm.
Like you feel their weight in your hand. They click when they go together, so it's very pleasing in a sensory way too.
Absolutely.
And then there's
Yes.
also like the boards are really beautiful. And
And there's a ritual and a rhythm to
yes.
the game.
Yes.
And what I like to say is, when you're getting together with friends and people you know well, sometimes you go on a walk or you go have a drink and it's a very focused, intentional conversation.
Yes.
But around the Mahjong table, you're focused on the game itself, and the conversation is sort of secondary.
Mm.
But it doesn't feel like it. You leave in a fulfilled way of your brain, the tactile, the sensory, and the connection. But it's not this intense, like 2 hour, how are you doing?
Download. Because that also, I mean,
Yeah.
it's so nice to have that. But I also feel
Yes.
it's similar to, I feel like I love therapy. I'm such a proponent of therapy, but I feel like
Ditto.
I'll have like an hour of therapy and then I'm like, I'm like, it
You're
was
drained.
good, but I'm
Yeah.
drained now. And it's sometimes like, especially my closest friendships, I'm like, I feel fulfilled, but I also like, it takes a lot. It's an active visit, to do that kind of thing.
Right. So 2 of the women that I was playing with, I
Yeah.
did not know them. Now they're dear friends of mine.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. It took a lot of pressure
Yeah.
off. I really just want to play the game and use my
Yeah.
brain. And if we talk about, how are your friends and how are your kids and where are they going to college or whatever the
Yeah.
conversation, it's just a small part of the experience.
Yes.
So yeah.
It was funny. I was seated next to Joanna Young, who's
Yes.
local, amazing aesthetic,
Esthetician.
like skincare
Mhm.
genius.
You both won.
And we won.
Yes,
We were
you
like a
did.
little
Shout
team,
out.
and we won, which was also pleasing.
Yes.
But she's in this season of the podcast as well. Like that
awesome.
interaction led to, there was enough of a connection and a conversation and connection over the strategy in the game, which is a really, I think people don't always talk about, like the value of, when we're kids, we engage in all these team sports and different things, and you get this amazing experience from being on a team with other people, right? You get to know
Mhm.
people differently when you're playing together.
Mhm.
Then we become adults, and it's like,
Mhm.
why don't we don't have time to play anymore? And I really love what you say about, the experience of the game. It's not just like, oh, I'm going to take 2 hours and just like chill. You're using your brain, and there are studies, there's data about community, being in community, but also having active, strategic, playful, experimental ways to use your brain and how that contributes to longevity.
Absolutely. Yes.
And that was a big takeaway because I'm very much like an efficiency person. I have 2 very young kids.
Yes.
So part of me was like, oh, I can go to this one night and kind of see what the game is about, but then walk away being like, okay, yes, this is a very complicated game. It'd probably take a little while before I felt really confident, but I also don't feel like this is like another hobby for me to try. It was like a very active, satisfying, intellectually stimulating experience that I feel like would then transfer into other things that you're doing and make you sharper at other parts of your life.
Yes. And so we started doing the partner learning for the introduction class. And I really love that. So you were partnered with Joanna. It's a game for 4. It's a strategy game for 4. But it's an intimidating game. I like to say that it's not necessarily difficult. It's just not intuitive.
Yes.
And so in the partner learning, you really get to know the person that you're strategizing with. And it just brings the experience full circle because it is intimidating to learn on your own. And when I started, it was going to people's homes, private lessons. We would travel to your home, provide everything. But then I really saw a need for women that were reaching out that said, well, I don't have a group of 4. I would like to learn. I've always wanted to learn, or my girlfriend and I want to learn, or I'm entering this new stage of life and maybe I'm looking for a new community or new friends. And so then I realized there was a need for me to create the venue for people to come to. And that was the lesson that you were a part of. And it was also a really fun collaboration with Michelle, the real estate agent, to show a house that was on the market.
Yep.
And I have found over and over again, the women that are gathered are really smart because they're there. They know that there's benefits of the game coming into it. So naturally, I'm finding that women are gathering like-minded, wanting to use their time intentionally. And to your point, if you're not at a place where you're going to be able to play on a regular basis, you know what it's about, tuck it away, play it as you need. And then I have other women that come to these lessons and they're playing 3-4 times a week. And it's exactly what they needed. They're exchanging phone numbers at the lessons, which I love. And they are making new friends and they are making new communities and they are getting out of the game so much more than the brain piece. They're getting the community piece. And those two together are what the longevity studies are showing are so beneficial for women and men as well.
Yeah.
I'm teaching men and I'm teaching couples, and a lot of couples, they play Siamese Mahjong, which is a 2-person Mahjong. So that's what date night looks like for them.
So fun. Your branding, you mentioned your background in marketing and it shows. Your branding, every experience from the beginning of the event to the follow-up to looking at your website, you have like a very just cute, chic, approachable, sharp brand that you've created. And it draws you in, it's colorful and fun. And you mentioned earlier, maintaining a sense of respect for the origins of the game, right? The cultural origins of the game. It is a Chinese game. You mentioned that it has Jewish ties too, but you encountered it in Dallas. Can you tell us a little bit about your understanding of like the cultural origins of the game, how it's kind of like how you have revered like the journey of Mahjong to finding you and the point in your life that you found it and how you sort of perpetuate that while building a business around it?
Yeah. So, it was brought to the Chinese Mahjong was brought to America in the 1920s by a businessman named Joseph Babcock. And he had spent a lot of time in China. And it was a social gambling game for men is how it was originally played. But it wasn't like people kind of think it was ancient times. I mean, it was really only in the late 1800s, which I know is a long time ago, but it's not like centuries old.
Right.
And so he brought that over to America and they were selling sets like crazy out of Abercrombie and Fitch. And it was so crazy that they put a tax on it. I mean, it was just everywhere. And what happened is as people were playing, they were starting to play their own rules. And it sort of just became a little bit, if you played here, you would play these rules. And then there was house rules. And even within the Asian cultures, there's Chinese Mahjong, there's Hong Kong Mahjong, there's Filipino, there's Taiwanese. So I have a lot of these women coming to my classes and they have they played Mahjong or they have memories of their grandmothers and their mothers and their aunties playing the game around the table, and just that, like you said, that kind of aesthetic feeling, that it's like an implicit memory for them.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Sense
so,
memory. 'Cause it's sound, it's
yes,
touch, it's look.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And the chatter, Crazy Rich Asians, as everyone
Yeah.
knows, that's another book, that the movie, that scene, that's Chinese Mahjong.
Yeah.
And so what happened is in 1937, a group of Jewish women in New York got together and they standardized the game and created the rules that we still play with to this day, 90 years later, actually in the 89th year. So they standardized the game of American Mahjong. So you've got your Chinese culture roots, then you have the Jewish heritage. It sort of had died out a little bit with the Great Depression.
Mm-hmm.
So really this Jewish community held on to the traditions of the game. They standardized the game. The community centers and a lot of the generations this has been where it has been grounded, is in the Jewish roots.
Mm-hmm.
And so they came out with the playing card, and that is what is released every year. The 2026 card just came out within the last couple of weeks. And in the Mahjong world, it's very exciting.
Yeah.
You play with the same card for a year. So when a new card comes out, you have a whole new set of hands and sequences. And it really just creates excitement every year. And then the South really got a hold of the game, I would say, in the last 10 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
And they are who came out with lots of different tiles and any kind of merch or any, they just really grabbed a hold of it.
Spending category out of this.
Yes.
Because the sets are like chic. I mean, Hermes has to have a Mahjong set.
They do.
Okay.
They do.
Because I'm like, they are even, what's the company that you offer a code with?
I have quite a few affiliate codes, but My Mahjong is the first brand
My Mahjong,
that I played with.
So cute.
And then, so I think that there's just an aesthetic piece to the game.
And they ran with that.
But I'd like to teach on traditional tiles too. So you've got traditional tiles, then you've got a lot of artists rendering on the tiles. And so that's kind of been a fun, let's make a tablescape out of this. Let's make it beautiful. But the tradition of the Chinese culture and the Jewish heritage, it's really like this beautiful tapestry of where the game is today.
Right.
And a lot of people can relate to a lot of those pieces.
And the underlying idea is like bringing people together, to a table, and it's strategy, and there's not like one way necessarily to win the game, right? Like every game's going to look a little different. There's the card. So can you break down what does the card have on it for someone who has no idea? Like what are you talking about? The card. What is the role of the card while you're playing Mahjong?
So it's a 4-person strategy game. You have a rack of tiles. The tiles are like playing cards. And there's a card with predetermined sequences or hands or lines. These are all interchangeable terms. And your goal is to take your 13 random tiles in front of you, and through a series of discarding and drawing tiles like you would be cards, your goal is to match a line that is found on the playing card with your rack of tiles. And last year's card, I haven't got the statistic on this year's card because it just dropped. There was 71 lines on the card, based on all the nuances of the ink color and the extra explanation in parentheses. There's 1,002 ways to win.
Wow.
And I think another part of the game is that it's stimulating your brain, but there's also they're talking about how it calms the brain too. So there's something about the pattern recognition, the ritual, you deal the same way, you swap tiles the same way.
Yes.
There's this beautiful, and so you can come to the table and have had a really crazy day. And like we talked about, you're not going to walk away thinking, oh, this is one more way to drain you. They're now showing that, especially with people that have ADD or ADHD, that there's a real calming piece to the brain. And Julia Roberts made the line famous. It's making order out of chaos. The chaos is your tiles. The order is the goal of the line that you're seeing on the card. And so I think even as I'm teaching Mahjong, and I've taught so many different classes, my curriculum and what I say has changed so much based on all the different ways that people learn, and all the different ways that I'm seeing the game have so many parallels to life.
Yeah.
We'll talk about, make sure you read those parentheses, both in the game and in life.
Yes.
Don't commit too early. It's risk reward. It's strategy. It's a little bit of luck. So there's just a lot of things that I find myself saying. I taught some golf wives the other day, and there was a lot of parallels to golf.
Yeah.
If you have too many golf clubs in your bag, you can be disqualified.
Yeah.
I have no idea. If you have too many tiles on your rack, it's a dead hand. Where do you want to make your move? And so I don't know. It's just, there's a lot of parallels to this game and to life and to how to approach life, whatever it throws at you.
I think one of your particular strengths is that you're able to explain it in a really accessible way, like what can feel like a very complicated game. It's not just like a Monopoly board and like boom, 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 here's the directions. Like,
Yeah.
like there are a lot of different pieces. There's the card, there's the setup, there's the order that everything follows. You take something that can feel very complex and intimidating and you break it down really, really well for beginners, and you have your Mahjong 101 and 102 classes for beginners, but you also are able to, within one room, also have your advanced players playing and catering to them and being able to level up their play while you're, kind of managing different audiences. How do you feel like, is that a natural skill set that you've had to sort of be able to work with people at different levels almost at the same time?
Right. Yeah. I think it's an important piece for a successful Mahjong instructor to have is the ability to manage different levels of skill, manage how quickly people pick up the game versus people that get frustrated. I think you have to have that natural people skill to read the room, to understand how you might have to explain something differently to one style of learning versus another.
Yes.
How you might have someone who's walks in who's maybe done a YouTube video or seen the tiles versus someone who's never even seen one. And I think it's important for everyone to walk away. It's very important to me for everyone to walk away from a Mahjong OC learning experiencing, feeling like they were met where they were, and whether they won or not, that they felt like they got a great experience and they were able to, like I say in my follow-up email, it's a complex game. I don't expect you to walk away from one lesson and go and enter tournaments, but I want you to understand it enough. And we play a full game in my lesson versus some classes that are 6 weeks. You take 2 or 3 sessions before you play the game.
You're watching for the majority of it. And I want not touching it. And
I want that hands-on. And so I do think the ability to teach to different levels, to teach to different learning styles, to meet people where they're at. Some people walk in the door and they have had a hard day. Some people have been wanting to do this forever. Some people are coming by themselves and they're nervous. And so I really take all of that into consideration, that people are walking away feeling like you said it was a good use of their night. Some people are like, I just didn't want to put the kids to bed tonight.
You're like,
this is my break.
Be here for you.
Yeah, and have a glass of wine and relax. It's not all serious. We teach the National Mahjong League way. I want people to know the rules. And then from there, do as you may. Do house rules, go and have wine, do whatever you want. But I want people to learn it the way that it was meant to be learned. And then from there,
make it their own. So you're a mom. Your kids are not little kids anymore.
No.
How many children do you have?
I have 3.
You have 3 kids.
Yes.
And it was interesting because as you were saying, meeting people where they are and embracing that different people in the same room are going to have different skill levels and levels of interest and natural talents. I'm looking at you and I'm like, oh, she's a mom, and I feel like the experience of having multiple kids, I'm just beginning to realize that because I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, but I'm like, they're implicitly different and they have different strengths and they have different weaknesses, and I'm learning how to kind of show up in the same room for 2 very different kids. And I'm curious whether for you, because you have this skill now, being able to read the room and accommodate a lot of different people around a common game. Do you feel like some of that came from your experience of motherhood and mothering 3 different kids?
I mean, I've never really thought about it that way, but yeah, I think that probably plays a big part, is that you how many times do you look at your children and go, I know I birthed all three of you, but you could not be more different right now.
Yes. And I have to be a mom to all of you and make it seem fair. You know?
Exactly. I have 2 boys and a girl, and the boys definitely say we favor the girl. But even if they all have different ways that they respond to teaching moments and to hard things and good things and the way that they see life. And so I think that approaching my clients with the way that I would approach my children, that what works for one doesn't necessarily work for the other. And also in my corporate background, when I was working with lots of different clients and different needs. And I mean, it's part of, I was a communication major in school, interpersonal communication. There's a lot of psychology to that. There's just, it's great how everything's come full circle to be able to thrive and enjoy what I'm doing now, whether it be what I learned in motherhood, what I learned in the corporate world, or even before then.
One of the reasons I've been so excited to sit down with you is that you're such a cool example of a woman that has had a variety of different experiences, but has brought threads of all of them together. And you've also, publicly, you chose to take some time and have your children, and have that be your focus, and then re-enter this thing. I mean, you made the choice, but it also kind of just like came to you naturally, right? To start this new business. And now you're doing something different, but it's also just weaving together all these different things. And our community, we really aim to serve people in moments of transition or wanting a new start or wanting their first start or wanting to try something bold that feels aligned with who they are and their skill sets of talents, wherever they might have come from.
Right.
So I think it's so cool to watch what you're building live, because people feel that energy. They feel that you're bringing not only your professional background, but all this motherhood pause and this new interest in a game that you're just passionate about, and you're weaving it all together.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I took an intentional step back from a full-time job, which I think is hilarious. Because being a mom is a full-time.
Calling it a full-time job is like a joke.
Yes, yes. And I've got, aging myself, but I did turn 50 a year and a half ago. And there was just a lot of, I have another good girlfriend that we turned 50 around the same time. And we just talked a lot about this synergy of something awakened in both of us, where I entered my 50th. Really, I felt fulfilled where I was. In terms of where I was definitely searching.
Yeah.
I had taken some, unfortunately my father passed away. And so I became trustee of all his finances and all his belongings. And so I looked into being a fiduciary or a trustee or estate. So kind of taking my pension background and my HR background. And so I went back and did some schooling for that. And I thought, okay, that's all of it very interesting to me. So I was searching for something, knowing that my kids were getting older, and my first left the nest last year to go away to college. So there was some searching there, but it certainly wasn't this like I woke up one day and thought, I need something in my life. Right. It was so organic, and it was just being open to what was out there and just saying yes, and just looking up and looking around, and everything sort of fell into place. And it makes sense now, looking back a year and a half later, that everything that it all led to this place. But I mean, I was really in the corporate world, and I remember going to Fashion Island, a local mall, and looking at the women pushing their strollers with the babies. And I wanted to do that. And then I became a mom, and it wasn't all about
it wasn't pushing your stroller around.
And it was a lot more to it. And it was actually lonely. Yeah. And this was all before, and again, aging myself, but this was before a lot of social media and the new moms group. I loved your interview with the new mom. That's just brilliant. Yeah, her concept to understand that new moms need a community, and they need to know that they're not alone. And I had a dear friend that we did our first babies together, and we would just be on the phone late at night, a little bit of texting. But before social media. It was kind of the mommy blogs was starting, but we just were like, is this normal? Is this weird? Is this, we don't know what to,
like, what is this rash?
Where's the handbook? Where's the handbook? And by the way, this is so lonely. And so, I think that for your audience, the transition that I feel like if you had told me that I would be having a whole new career at 50, I would have been like, what's that going to look like? And it's around a game and it's around community, but it is, like you said, so beautifully putting these threads of everything that I've done up until this point makes so much sense. And my marketing background, to be fair, there was no social media when I was taking those classes and when I was doing marketing for a cosmetics company a long time ago. So learning social media and learning Canva and it's been so invigorating too. It's been a steep learning curve, but I've loved it. So it means a lot that you like my brand because it's a lot of late nights.
I mean, I actually love that you shared that you recently turned 50 because I feel like this is a story that needs to be heard, right? Like, I think that your energy when you enter a room it's very clear that you're a person who has at this point, at least, trusted that all the experience that you've had up to this point were intentional, tie into who you are some way. There weren't, I think that there is coming from, I'm a person that is very, I have a lot of curiosities and a lot of like, if I have an interest in something in life, like I have to almost satisfy it. I want to squeeze all the juice out of the lemon of life, but along with that sometimes can be like, well, was that like a random, like that, this and that to other people might not seem connected. And I feel like as I've gotten older, I'm like, well, I don't have to tell the story of how they connect. Like, it's all in me. And that story will be told by what I'm doing in my passions, and I think that it's inspiring to see women, moving forward with that energy and giving themselves permission where it's like, hey, I think I might I don't have to, just because I chose my career was central for a period of time, doesn't mean I can't have my motherhood central for a period of time. And then maybe that shifts again where that's such a big part of this community. We started and people ask questions. They're like, is this a podcast about like jobs? And I'm like, well, yeah, but it's about choices, and pathways and options. And the goal is to illuminate how many different ones there can be and how nonlinear it is, even for the people that when you look at their profile or whatever, it seems like that must have been a linear straight shot to the top.
Yeah.
Because
it's not.
Yeah, totally. Like someone might look at how curated and beautiful. So you've mentioned your training, your HR background and marketing. I think it's important to mention that the training that you were doing was in corporate pension plans.
Yes. How glamorous is that?
And I think that there's such a tie to what you're doing with, Mahjong, which is a complicated game. Corporate pension plans are complicated things, but being able
they're almost archaic now.
Right? But the ability to take something that's like very intimidating and
break it down.
And break it down. Have you always had that? Where did that come from? Your ability to approach that and make things
that's a great question.
Digestible.
I think I've been systems oriented and I've been, how can I make this more approachable? How can I make this more, there's been something in me or my background or my education where it's looking at something from lots of different angles. I talk about, different learning styles and different ways to approach things. And so there's that psychology piece, there's the communication piece, there's the understanding of the game. And so the way that my brain works and the way that I'm organized and the way that I like to chunk things down, I then try and figure out how to articulate that. And so when I was in HR and pension plans and 401k plans, we were often working as a team to take these complicated equations and share them in layman's terms, because if employees couldn't understand the benefit that they were getting through these pension plans, then it wasn't really a benefit for them to realize they were getting. And so yeah, I mean, we would just project manage and just the way that I liked my brain works. But my dad was very much like that, just
Mm.
very, when you're like that, is it left brain or right brain? I always forget.
I know. I think left is the creative. I think right is more
Yes.
structured.
So
right?
that was my dad. And then
Mhm.
my mom is very much the creative.
Mm.
And so I just had this beautiful blend in watching them, and then probably genetically the way that I'm wired
Right.
to have the understanding of something complicated, and then maybe creatively trying to figure out how to then communicate that
Right.
in a approachable way.
Yeah, and that's also meaningful and creative, and brings your
Yeah,
personality.
and
to it.
we were it was such a fun company, even though it was pension plans and
Crazy to
401k.
hear.
Yeah, we were
I'm
all
like, was it though?
yes. It was in the 90s, and we worked hard, but
Yeah.
it was a lot of us, we were in our 20s, and they had a cafeteria with free food. They had foosball. Like, they really got that if you create a great environment,
Mhm.
people will work hours for you. Like, it was kind of brilliant. We would
Yeah.
come in, have breakfast, and leave after dinner because
Yep.
we were all in our 20s, and we thought, great, we have free
Yeah,
food.
it's all here.
We'll work hard for you.
Yeah.
And we had, our clients were Disney and Southern California Edison and Nestle and really big companies with lots of employees. And so we would work hard, we would play hard, and all around the name of, 401k and pension plans. So that's why I think I can make anything cute and fun.
Yeah,
Even
I
pension
believe you.
plans.
I believe you. I'm like, oh, that sounds kind of fun. Like,
Yeah, it was very fun.
Well, I think it's really interesting that I'd love to get into your childhood and where you're from,
Yes.
and I'm excited to see how that sort of adds even more depth to what we're talking about and what you've been doing. So you were born in Australia.
I was.
And you moved to New Zealand when you were 7.
Yes.
So first of all,
What's our New Zealand connection? Because
Yes.
you just posted
I was
about
just
it. I know.
So my husband's side of the family, through another very New Zealand born and raised family, we have a big family property out in New Zealand that we love to visit. It's just I think, especially this area of New Zealand that we go to, feels like literally Middle Earth. It feels like it's untouched. I really feel connected to God there, because I'm there's just the sheep look healthy. The cows are beautiful. They're shiny. The food is it's different. It's a very green, lush, beautiful place.
Yes.
So we try to go every year, and now
Amazing.
our kids are my oldest daughter has been, I think, 3 times already, and she's only 5. So it's such a cool culture, and I love the New Zealand people. I've never been to Australia though, and I know that there is sort of similar to. I'm trying to think of what would be the comparison to somewhere here. It'd be like NorCal, SoCal, sort of maybe. But the Australia, New Zealand thing, when someone says oh, are you an Aussie? Or and it's a New Zealand accent, and they're like, no, I'm from New Zealand,
Yes.
So
and don't offend me.
Right? They're excuse me. Or that was a horrible, I won't even attempt my accent. We'll wait until I've had a couple drinks for that.
That was my party trick in college.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
to put on my accent.
And could you alternate between the two?
Yes.
Can you still?
Well, I'm not going to do it. No, I have to have a couple of drinks too.
Right,
all my friends know. Give her a couple
hours.
of drinks and she'll speak in her accent.
Right.
Well, I thought about teaching my Mahjong lessons in a New Zealand accent.
That would be beautiful.
I think that would honestly, get me even more business.
I think at one point my husband and I on it was the original directions apps and stuff, where you can set it to Snoop Dogg's voice, or there was a New Zealand man.
Yes.
So we both set it to that. I was it's just so pleasing and so friendly. But I mean, to move at 7 when you're probably just starting to get a sense of oh, my home has a specific culture and other places have different cultures, and to move to a parallel culture that is similar but distinctly different, and having that transition, and then you moved to the States when you were 14.
Yeah, just shy of 14. That was the big one. Yeah.
Okay, so can you tell me about how, these leaps between cultures, one in kind of an almost competitive culture, and then a full dive into America.
Yeah.
How did that shape your experience as a really young person? Were you shy? Were you outgoing? What was it like to be in these new settings?
Yeah, I would say those moves shaped tremendously who I am today. And just being from that culture, it's a huge part of who I am. My parents met in college in New Zealand. And so they were born and raised, I think we're 3rd, 4th generation from New Zealand. And in soon after they were married, there was an opportunity for them to move to Australia. In the 70s, there was some great work opportunities. And so they were young. My parents were very young when they got married and had my brother and I close in age. But they had moved to Australia. So that's why I was born in Australia. And then when my dad's dad, my grandfather, was not well, my parents decided to move back to New Zealand. He ended up living many more years, which was great. So we were in Australia for 7 years. For my parents were young in their 20s. And I just have memories of running around the beach and Greek neighbors and, but, you know, not really remembering a ton about that time. It was just really carefree and fun. And my world was like my primary school and home and my neighbors and home. And so then when we moved to New Zealand, it was moving back home for my parents, and it was moving around family. And so I immediately felt that, oh, this is what it's like to be around cousins and aunts and uncles. And so that felt really warm to me. But even though Australia and New Zealand culturally are very similar to the outside person, there's the accents are different.
Yes.
So I came as a 7-year-old, which is, you know, kind of kinder first grade, and I spoke differently. I spoke with an Australian accent. And so I was made fun of with a 7-year-old made fun of. You talk funny.
Yeah. Oof.
And so
it's pure, but it hurts so deep.
Yes. And so
attentions, but ouch.
I realized that I did not like that kind of attention. And so, but you know, I saw it. My mom was great about seeking out for like, let's find friends that live locally and let's find friends. So I had good friends right off the bat. I had my family. So that transition, other than remembering being made fun of for my little tweaks, like New Zealand, you'll say fish, like fish and chips, and and Australians fish and chips, you know, so it's just small little tweaks, but that was what I remember. But I just remember being home, and I remember being around family, and I remember that being spending a lot of time at my grandparents' house and spending a lot of time with cousins. And my mom grew up in the South Island in a beautiful area and outside of Nelson, and we had a farm. And so our summer vacations were spent on the farm. So it was really idyllic for me to have that childhood again. My parents were young. They went on to have 2 more kids with quite a big age gap between my brother and I. There's 7 years. And then my brother and sister are close in age. So it's almost like 2 little families.
Yeah. How was that set up for you? I love the sibling dynamics and kind of like, 'cause you're technically a middle child, but not really. You're sort of like the youngest of a first set.
Right. And between my brother and my personality, I really took on the role as the oldest child. He's just very mellow, very much a peacemaker. And so I think I was a little more assertive. And so we're only 16 months apart. Okay. So I almost acted like a first child, firstborn, rather than a middle. Sure. And then, you know, my mom becoming a mom again for littles with such a big age gap, I just felt like I was really independent because she was so busy with the younger 2. And we weren't really living in the house for a huge amount of time. I mean, I went off to college and my sister was still, you know, in middle school. Yeah. So maybe even younger. But yeah, it's a great dynamic now to have a sister who's almost 10 years younger. And so anyway, the sibling dynamic was great. Living in New Zealand I didn't appreciate it when I lived there. It really is. It's really kind of just heaven on earth. I know. I know. So I did go back in my 20s when I like to say I retired when I was 27, because everyone would say, oh my gosh, New Zealand's so beautiful. And I knew my street and my town, and I knew the farm, but we didn't really travel the country the way that people who go and visit travel it. So I retired for 3 months, and I really did the entire country.
How cool.
And I did it during the winter. So with a friend, and we snowboarded and Wanaka, and I was like, oh yeah, this really is a beautiful country. Really lucky. And then I ran out of money. And so
we do in our 20s.
Yeah. So that retirement was short-lived, and I came back and, met my husband. So it was a perfect time to do it. And I just really, it's a beautiful, beautiful country. The culture is beautiful. It's hard for me to really be super objective because the culture is it's my family.
Right. It's your home.
And so it's my home. But some people say, where do you go to feel grounded? And you said you kind of have that spiritual experience when you go. And that's for sure New Zealand for me. I'm an island girl.
Yeah.
There's something. Did you ever see the movie The Whale Rider?
No, but should I?
You should.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Whale Rider.
The Whale Rider. It's an indie film
Okay.
a long time ago now, but I don't know. I feel like her. She's just an island girl.
Yeah.
So then, yes, the move to America was big because the cultures were so much different than moving from Australia to New Zealand.
Yeah.
And I was almost
first
14.
You moved towards family, so it was like that was a big
away
move,
from
but
family.
It was getting
yes
cozier.
Yes. Yes. Moving away from family, moving to a completely different culture, and starting freshman year of high school.
Oof.
It was a lot.
Wow. Was it work opportunities for your parents?
Yeah. They had a work opportunity. My dad had a work opportunity, and it was a 3-year assignment.
Okay.
And they were also involved in the church. And so there were some ministry opportunities that were available up here that they weren't in New Zealand. And so they kind of wanted to explore that a little bit. But it was really rooted in the fact that my dad was able to transfer his job. His company had a LA-based office.
Okay. And had they always been interested in coming to the U.S. or to California specifically?
My mom is, yes. My mom is an adventurer.
Yeah.
And
the creative one.
Yeah, the creative one.
Sounds familiar.
She now lives part of her time in Vanuatu, which is a small island in the Pacific. So she's an island girl. She likes to say yes, and just like everything is an adventure. And my dad's company had an assignment for him. So we were 3 years, and we were sold on the idea of like, we'll live by Disneyland and it'll be great. But the reality was it was a really, really shocking shocking move. My daughter is the age now that I was when I moved.
Wow.
So in the last couple of months, I've just found myself looking at her and thinking, I can't imagine her moving away from her friends, away from what is known, to another culture.
Mm-hmm.
But again, there was so many good things that have come out of that. I'm so glad my parents said yes to the opportunity. It doesn't mean it wasn't hard.
Yeah.
And now I had an accent that was very novel. It was not made fun of.
Yeah.
It was, I hear you talk really cool talk.
Yeah.
And I had a bad perm and braces, and I was 100 pounds wet, and I was just shy, and I did not like the attention. And I literally got here 2 weeks before freshman year. And so everyone was coming from their middle schools with friends, and I just remember going, how do I fit in? I don't know how to fit in. I don't know this culture. I don't speak the same way. Everything was just larger than life. I came home. I was talking to my mom about it because, you have your recollection, and then maybe there's a little bit of reality that an adult can bring to it. And she said, you came home within the first couple of weeks and you said that I'm going on a diet. And we had never heard the word diet growing up in New Zealand. It just wasn't a word.
No, but I know it's such it's part of the culture, especially, it still is, honestly, in different ways.
Yeah. This was like late 80s, early 90s. So I wanted to go on a diet, and there was the material opportunities were just so much there. Mm-hmm. We went from a very simple life. I had roller skates, and I would just roller skate all over the neighborhood. And then we would go to the farm, and I tell my kids these stories, and they're like, they roll their eyes. They think it's my version of walking uphill, both ways in the snow. But I'm like, but it was very simple. Yeah. And here life was a land of opportunity. Mm. And everything was big. And I went to a really interesting high school in that it was indoors, which was so unique for California. They were doing like a experiment. Mm-hmm. Typically, they would do those indoor schools for areas that had the climate, snow or what have you. Right. So we literally came indoors. I was indoors all day long in this new school as a new kid. And it was a big culture shock, to say the least. But maybe, to think about that person that's walking into my class that doesn't know anyone, that doesn't know what's going to, is maybe taking a leap of faith or what that looks like. I don't know if that's a big stretch of a parallel, but I think that experience brought a lot of empathy to me, to someone who I look out for that person that maybe is new or in a new situation, or, doesn't show up with their 4 best friends. What does that look like? Because I was the first couple of years were rough of learning the culture and trying to fit in and finding where I belonged. And so, and not having family. That was hard. We didn't have community. We were finding community all over again.
Brand new.
That's why community is so important to me now.
What do you do? If you could locate like a coping strategy that maybe looking back, like how were you coping with that as, freshman in high school? Were you seeking out friends in school? Were you keeping your circle kind of more small and protected? How were you you mentioned the like diet interest at such an early age, and how that can kind of affect our brains, all realizing basically like going from being this like free, like farm existence, then to being like, whoa, America pressures and brand new high school and American high school. And,
what cheerleaders and the football players. I was like, this is like the movies.
All in. Yeah.
All in.
How are you coping?
That's a great question. I observe. I was observing a lot. And I see that a lot in my middle child. He observes, then acts. And I think that's a big approach for me. So I was doing a lot of observing. I had my faith. And so I think that I felt belonging and community in the church that we belong to. But also wrestling with, but that's not always cool to be, going to church and trying to also make spirituality my own and not just because my parents were doing that, kind of wrestling with that, but also finding, it was the youth group. We were sort of a bunch of misfits. And so there was some comfort in that. And I've always kind of found like the popular group and found like sought them out, even as recently as joining a tennis team. And I remember observing for a long time the girls that I wanted to become friends with, but just waiting.
Yeah.
And then by the end of high school, I had 5 best friends that I'm still close to this day. And we were in each other's weddings. And so I think I'm not one to just jump into a friendship,
right?
Or I'm a Scorpio and I'm loyal to a fault. And so I think that, I've joked with so many dear friends that when we first started out, it's like, oh no, I don't have applications for new friends. Right. I am often, some people will say, you were just really quiet or, cold, or, they're like, you're just so personable and you're so extroverted. I'm not. I'm an introvert and I'm observant. But if I'm your friend, like I'm your friend.
Yeah.
I'm your ride or die. And so I think when in high school, it took me a while to find my friends. And now, like I said, one friend we see each other all the time. And so to me, yes, I liked to keep my world small. And even to this day, I had kept it pretty small, which is the irony of starting Mahjong OC,
which
because
is like this exploding community.
It's exploding community. And I think I found that was a coping skill too. I needed to keep it small and I needed to control what I could control because it felt so out of control. I also feel like we have coping skills that are not healthy. And so a lot of my maturity in becoming a mother and saying yes to this business is that we're not meant to go in this alone. We're not meant to keep our world small. What does it look like if we open ourselves up and we become vulnerable and we say yes and we take a chance? I gathered girlfriends around for my 50th and it was just this beautiful picture of women that over the last 30 years, I had said yes to and I had leaned into. And I thought if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have them in my life. So yes, there's a sense of control when you keep your world small, But my friend Stephanie says, what's on the other side of fear?
Yes.
And so what can it look like if you just say, I mean, my mom is like, I can't believe you go and meet strangers and teach them. And I think all the things, all the moving to a new country, experiencing the hard, how am I going to cope? I wasn't a partier. I didn't cope through drinking. And so I was a good girl. That wasn't my coping.
Mm-hmm.
I think I sat in it and I felt the loneliness and I felt that this is hard. And I sought out good friends that are friends to this day. And, I think I kept my world again small in college and then my work world. And then when I had kids, it was like, well, we could just be real small in this little part of Newport.
Yeah.
But it's so different when you have other people that you're responsible for.
Yeah.
And I thought, just because I like to be small and protect and control and like to be home, that doesn't mean that I need to do that for my kids. So I said yes to school friends who now those moms are dear, dear, dear friends that I could not imagine doing life with. So, I think that's for me the piece of, I would prefer a very small, simple home life. But when I do choose to say yes, this community of women that I've been just honored to, first of all, be friends with, and now be teaching and having them have their own communities, that's the full circle picture for me.
Kashia and I did an episode for this season pretty recently about sort of what we do when we're going through hard times and sort of what our defaults are. And in this world of, everyone sharing everything on social media and they're like, be vulnerable on social media and all this stuff. We've tried to be really deliberate about, obviously we have people come on the podcast and talk about very vulnerable, sometimes traumatic events and things, but it's intentional, it's not just, and usually it's looking in the rear view mirror, right? We're not having people come in and be like, this is my life drama
happening
and
right now.
Everybody help me solve it, because, we were examining, at least for ourselves, is like, in my hardest times, it's usually like, I get real small, and it's like, okay, a few trusted people and you sort of like that's your world and you want to make your world smaller while you're kind of
absolutely
figuring something out. And so I can imagine like when you've had these big transitions when you were a young person, that type of energy, where it's like, all right, let's just keep it small and safe and kind of like observe for a little bit while we're like forming ourselves. And now it's so cool because I feel like you've maintained that feeling of intimacy and, self-respect, which really like being able to like keep your community tight, but also, expanded in this, chapter of your life and been able to spend the time knowing yourself and growing that in these different settings of your life. And now it's like just this like blossoming, in the 5th decade of your life. I think it's amazing and so inspirational for, I think, women of all ages and stages to see that it's like, oh, all these pieces of the puzzle, all these tiles on the board, like can feel like chaos and pull together to order. And, it's social, but it's also your brain. So it's
there's an end point. Yes. And when you're done being social, there's an end point to the game and you can leave and it's not rude.
Yes.
Sometimes you go to a dinner party and you're like, when can I leave?
Now I have to start my goodbyes, or am I going to Irish exit?
I've perfected the Irish goodbye. I have my girlfriends that know me well are like, Jodie or if I even have people over, I just go upstairs to bed and they're like, okay, I guess she's done with us.
I think it's over.
Yeah. So it's a balance, right? You got it. My friends are like, you're not introverted, but there's a term, I think social introvert is what I would fall under, where I do love being around people, but oh my goodness, we talked about that resetting, that recharging. When I teach, it takes a lot out of me. When I have a full week, then, I have an event, I'll definitely have a lot of downtime to counteract that. And so I know that about myself. I can push myself, but I also know that I need to have that ability to recharge and will 9 times out of 10 choose to be at home with my family in a robe, preferably is my goal. And yeah.
I love it. Knowing that you have a teenage daughter, and at so much of the heart of our community from the beginning when we were working more with teens to now where we're, our audience is a lot of women in stages of transition and, different life moments. But that the heart of our company is that this, the vulnerability of the teen is something that we go through and is difficult pretty much for all of us. And it stays with us that little, it's a thing that can really connect to all of us as women when we embrace it. It's like, oh yeah, that teenager is still living in me too. Now that you have a daughter who is in that stage, if you're thinking of her, are there any parts of your teen experience that were difficult or that you learned something from that you would have loved if someone could shed light on? Is there anything from your teen experience that you're like, oh, you should know, I went through this or this?
That's a good question. I just think that my move right smack in the middle of a vulnerable time of 13, 14 years old was so monumental for how it shaped me that I feel like the little pieces of hard are almost overshadowed when I look back. When I see my daughter invest in her friendships and are kind to her friends, I just compliment her on that. And I point that out to her and I say, what do you love about this friend? I think that is where I want her to be. It's also a balance, right? Mom, you don't know anything. Mom, I mean, she's a pretty dreamy kid and I think kind of amazing, but I know that she's rolling her eyes a little bit more. Still not, I haven't reached the hard parts. She's almost ready for high school. I'm sure it's coming. But after raising two boys who there's just really, it's very like, feed me and make sure I'm sleeping. And it's like, there's just definitely a little bit more to the layers. I'm just trying to not nitpick and just lean into, gosh, you have beautiful friends. Gosh, I love when you speak so highly of this friend, or what do you love about her? Mom, that's a weird
lit up after you're with that person. Why do you
Mom, that's a weird question. What do you mean? What do I like about her? And it's like, well, I hear you laughing, and it's just the way that they connect is so different from, I used to roller skate to my friend Megan's house.
Or being like, learn from my negative, more leaning into like, oh, I'm noticing positives.
Well, and they just connect all day long over FaceTime, over like they're just in constant connection. So I hear the giggles, I hear the laughs coming from her bedroom. And it's different it's so different from when I was a teenager. It was like we were home with our family or we would go visit a friend, but there was no
constant connection.
Constant connection. And if that's negative, think about the consequences of a lot of negative connections. So I'm just trying to lean into the fact that they all are right now complementary of each other. And as their bodies are changing, it's just keeping that really positive. I'm really blessed. She's really blessed that she's had this great friend group from really kindergarten. And I don't take that for granted because I know that it's not always the case. And there's definitely been the same things I felt of being left out. But I certainly didn't have a phone with a snap map to know where people were. I mean, it's just so much more intense these days. But, maybe you knew someone got together with somebody else. I remember that as a teenager. I had these two friends that were inseparable and I just so badly wanted to be the third. But they'd grown up together and they had a bond that far surpassed what I could do. But then now they're two of my good friends and it just looks different. So just trying to have conversations around what does it look like to be included, and sometimes you don't have to be included in everything. And love hanging out with yourself, love yourself and enjoy and be comfortable being able to be by yourself, which is so hard in this day and age of connection and social media and all of that.
Well, this has been such a fun conversation. I love what you're building. I love the community that you're building because really, this is a company, but it's a community. You're bringing women into rooms that are often strangers, and you're giving them a chance to work their brains and have interactions that are kind of low stakes and low pressure because you're focused on something else. And I think that that's really a magical formula for women to be connecting and inspiring each other at all ages. So we always end our episodes, or we try to. I actually feel like I forgot to do this on the one I shot most recently, but we like to ask the question, what is a quality or a characteristic that you had when you were a teenager that maybe you didn't appreciate back then, but you look back and you love about yourself now?
Oh, what I just said about teaching my daughter that learn to love your own company. I go back to those white roller skates that my dad brought back from Australia, and I would put them on and I would just roller skate around the neighborhood by myself for hours. And I think it's important. I enjoyed my own company. I don't know what I did. I probably made up a lot of fun little imaginary worlds that I was roller skating in. But I think it's important to know who you are, love who you are, and then bring that to your friendships.
I love that answer. And I feel like you're so doing that to this day. So thank you, Jodie, for sitting down with us
Thank you for having
our
me.
Community. And I look forward to sitting
Thanks
down
for
with
having the old lady.
Oh my gosh, hardly. You're literally like glowing and oh my gosh, building something so alive and cool. So
Thank you
really
for having me.
this.
Yes, we'll see you next time at the 102.
Yes.
And that's our show. If you liked what you heard today, please like, subscribe to, follow, and share Meet Bridget with your circle. The best way to help our work here is to rate and review our podcast. We're listening and constantly working to build something helpful for you. Catch you next time.
Bring it on, baby.